pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for attending. First item on the agenda this evening is public comments. So this would be a time that you would come forth and make a public comment, preferably that's not on the agenda. So is there any public comments this evening by anyone? Seeing none in the audience. We did have two people, I think, Council, that you had some information on, a Cindy Dickinson and also a Jenny Holt, about the potential homeless camp that we were discussing out in the Empire area that Deborah was thinking about doing. Roger contacted them and told them that we were looking at another area or different areas, had directed staff, so they are not going to be coming down. And he also stated that their written comments would be part of the record, which they will be. So, next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes, the consent calendar, I should say. Excuse me. Council, how would you like to proceed?
I move we approve the consent calendar.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar submitted. Is there any other comments or discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes. So earlier we had some, budget committee approvals and also design assistant team. We interviewed two each this evening. The list is before us. No, I take that back. One did not attend. Let me get that. Donald Dilley did not attend. He did not show. But we did interview MJ Kariva, Sarah Stevens, and Judith. And we also council interviewed Colleen Sutton, Coco. And so we have two positions open on the budget committee and four, but we have two that have applied for this evening. So how would you like to proceed? We can split them up, or let's do the budget committee first. So
I sent an email for the ballot.
She sent us an email to vote.
thank you. Well, now I got to find it.
I cannot access my email. I can't access my email. I was just,
Thanks, Melissa.
Do you want to just write on your?
yeah.
Okay, so we'll get to go ahead and vote.
There you go.
Okay, how's this work? Let's do this again.
And that's in.
Isn't the X supposed to happen here when we highlight it?
Should be able to click in the box.
Did you?
Should be able to click in the square.
Did you click in yours?
I did.
Oh, I can't do that.
You
Well, I
gotta
can't
hit- You gotta
either.
hit reply first. Did you
Oh,
reply?
hit reply.
Oh my gosh. All right, Melissa, my fault.
Or you can just fill out a paper one like I just did.
Gee, mini. All right.
And then once you hit reply, you scroll
Jeez.
down to her message section. You should-
Thanks, Rob.
Technology, right?
Yeah, right. Obviously, I'm not very good at it.
Well, look at that.
Yeah, dang it, it worked. All right, did everyone submit theirs? And then Melissa will give us the, jeez. Melissa will give us the,
He said it was only,
It should be,
I'll try it.
it should be the same password. For you.
Good.
As what you just changed.
Okay.
Yeah, we just had to change. Everybody had to change it.
No, just Stephanie.
No, I had to change mine too.
I'm
Oh,
the
you did
special
too?
treasurer today.
And you didn't have any issues? That you know of yet?
No, no, I was able to sign in, so good to go.
Okay, good.
I also want to mention that Lucinda won't be here this evening. Drew is attending virtually, so.
So
Budget.
if I reply and vote again, do I get extra votes?
No.
Or
Melissa
do
won't
they-
let
or
you-
do they count?
Budget committee appointments, Sarah Stevens and Colleen Sutton. Design assistants, team appointments, MJ Kariva and Judith Lucier.
All right, thank you. So they'll be notified?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right, next item on the agenda is consideration of the appointments, consideration of initiation of Maxwell right-of-way. Nope, consideration of appointments, I was correct, on the homeless work group. So Drew and Stephanie and Roger did some interviews. And so their list is below. And that, so if I understand correctly, this is the list that you're submitting or suggesting? Is that correct, Drew, Stephanie?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, we had a number of, a large number of people that applied for that committee. And these were the recommendations that we put forward.
I think it's great that we have so much interest in it,
Yeah,
and
that's great.
yeah, it is. And this committee's been going for how many years now?
It was approved in late 2017, and I think it got formally formed and membership in early 2018. And since that time, it's met 14 times, but unfortunately has not met since the pandemic restrictions went into place back in March.
Sure. But as you know, Council, that this has been a great committee, and they've really been helpful in a lot of ways, and they have a heck of a task in front of them, so I appreciate all the work, and Drew and Stephanie both, and look forward to the committee getting back and coming up with some suggestions on how to move forward. The next item is,
So I think
we
we'll
need to
just
approve the
vote on
list.
Do we need to?
Need to ratify the appointments.
Okay. So Council,
I'll make the motion that we appoint and reappoint the recommended list of applicants.
Second.
it's been moved and seconded to ratify the suggestion by the homeless work group chairs, I should say, Drew and Stephanie. And any other comments on that? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Next item, consideration of initiating Maxwell right-of-way vacation. Since, Jim, you can be handling
Yes,
this?
sir, I'll take this one, thank you. The city received a right-of-way vacation request from Red Moon Development and Construction for the northernmost portion of Maxwell Road abutting tax lot 4000. That can be seen on the attached map. And the Coos Bay North Bend city limit line. This application is submitted in conjunction with a subdivision land use application in which the Planning Commission has recommended approval at their November 10th meeting. The proposal is to vacate an area approximately 50 feet by 125 feet of the undeveloped Maxwell Road right-of-way, which would then become part of the private development. The private development itself will be accessed by a private drive that connects the city of North Bend's Connecticut Avenue off of Roosevelt, eliminating the necessity for the Maxwell Road right-of-way access. Comments were sought from all city departments, and there were no objections. Comments were also solicited from local utilities, and there were no objections. However, it should be noted that a 20-foot utility easement is required and is being provided. As the vacation is within 1,000 feet of the shoreline, the Port Commission was required to provide its input, and they did at their December 15th, 2020 commission meeting, and they approved the vacation. Should the council initiate this vacation request, the public hearing to enact the ordinance for vacation will be February 2nd, 2021.
So there's no cost associated with this
Not for the city.
Pardon?
Not for the city.
Right, okay. Questions, Council?
Jim, does the 20-foot utility easement satisfy the water board's request?
Yes, it does.
Any other questions, anyone? Hearing none, how would you like to proceed?
I'll make a motion to initiate the vacation of the northerly approximately 125 feet of Maxwell Road right-of-way.
Second?
Been moved and seconded to initiate the Maxwell right-of-way vacation. Any other comments or discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see here. Consideration of approval of amendment number 2 to the Civil West Engineering East Side Safe Routes to School Construction Management Contract. Jim?
Yes, as you said, Civil West was contracted to do construction management services for the Safe Routes to School project there in Eastside. Civil West is requesting an amendment to their contract. The purpose of this amendment is to perform the additional activities and tasks that Civil West has identified as necessary to provide additional construction management and inspection based on the additional working days requested by and granted to the project's contractor, Knife River Materials. The extension was granted to Knife River's Materials because the startup of the project was slowed due to the COVID-19 pandemic and shutdown. This unforeseen event was out of the control of the contractor, as well as hindered the ability to get materials delivered in a timely manner. All this has led to extending the contract by 30 days, and the Civil West Amendment will cover construction management and inspection for these additional days. And I'm requesting council consider approval of Civil West Engineering SRTS Project Construction Management Contract Amendment 2 for an amount not to exceed $19,000 for a contract fee of, or total contract fee of $160,500.
So council, you have any questions on this? Anyone?
So where does this money come from?
It's from our Safe Routes to School grant.
The grant will cover the extra 19,000?
Well, that, and then we also have our city match, so it's going to come out of the city match.
It'll come out of the road improvement fund.
So was this expected on this COVID-19? I mean, this was started before that, right? Or after that, I mean?
No, I think it was pretty close to when the pandemic began. I'm happy to say that we're at least not dealing with a change order request from the contractor himself for this, but it wasn't expected. Just a month or two ago, we thought it would end on time, but we learned late in December that it would not.
Okay.
And can you explain, there was work underway by Civil West, even though this happened outside of that resulted in the larger fee?
Yeah, staff questioned and scrutinized this request. Our thoughts were if they hadn't been providing services during those days, then we weren't sure why we were paying extra for those services. But in reality, while not all the work was being conducted, there was work, a continual amount of work that was going on throughout the project timeline, just not enough. So they were on site, but this will require them to put extra time on site.
So in that scrutiny, you kind of tightened up that dollar figure as well?
I think Jim and Randy were relentless on trying to make sure it cost the least amount as possible.
But it's still good quality work. All right.
The project looks pretty good over there, and it's a nice improvement.
Now we got to worry about the road.
Next will be the road.
One thing after another. We've got the nice sidewalks and everything. Anyway, council, comments, questions? How do you want to proceed?
I would like to move that we approve the Civil West Engineering Safe Routes to School Project Construction Management Contract Amendment 2 for an amount not to exceed $19,000 for a total contract fee of $160,500.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the amendment number 2 to Civil West Engineering for Eastside Safe Routes to School, construction management contract. Any other comments or discussions or discussion on this item? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Okay, so this, we're going to have consideration of enactment of an ordinance amending park hours. Jim, you want to give us an oversight, and then I'll open up a public hearing on this?
Sure. The city boat ramps in East Side and Empire are currently open 24 hours a day. Over the last year, homeless individuals have occupied and in some instances set up camps primarily at the Empire facility. The restrooms at Empire Boat Ramp facility have suffered from significant and repeated vandalism over the last year, and the impact to city resources is compounded by the requirement under the governor's COVID-19 direction that the restrooms are to be sanitized at least twice daily. Since the ramps are open for 24 hours, ideally they would be cleaned more frequently. With the ramps open 24 hours a day, the Coos Bay Police Department has limited ability to trespass folks. The Parks Commission and staff recommend the hours of operation at both the Empire and East Side boat ramps be reduced to the hours of 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. Council discussed this matter at the December 15th council meeting and directed staff to prepare an ordinance revising the ramp's hours of operation.
So these two areas fall underneath the park regulations in?
Yes.
So I also know that it came up in discussion that 5 a.m. on these boat ramps sometimes might not be early enough for access if they're fishing, but if I understand correctly, the police have the authority to allow that kind of activity if necessary for fishing, is that right?
They do have discretion on that.
Yes.
They utilize the same discretion when they have runners in the park.
Okay, so I presume that the police
Joggers.
chief, the police will be aware of that during the fishing season and will allow those to happen, correct?
Correct, yes.
Right. I know, I have to look around, thank you, chief. All right, other comments or questions?
So, Jim, is this just for the boat ramps? All the other parks, are they still dusk to dawn?
That's correct.
The only one that's not dusk to dawn would be the boardwalk. But we have people that live down off the boardwalk
Right.
lawfully.
Lawfully in there. Good.
So council, how would you like to proceed?
Public.
Oh, I take that back. I apologize. Thank you. Okay, we're going to open a public hearing on this, so I'll do that at this time. Would anyone like to make a comment about this? This would be the time to come forth and give us your opinion or comment, please. Seeing no public comment, close the public hearing, and now ask the council how you'd like to proceed.
I'll make a motion that, to enact an ordinance amending ordinance number 248, regulating activities and uses within the Coos Bay Park System, as amended by ordinance numbers 534, 476, 458, 428, and 296.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to enact an ordinance amending park hours. Melissa, roll call, please.
An ordinance amending ordinance number 248, regulating activities and uses within the Coos Bay Park System as amended by ordinance numbers 534, 476, 458, 428, and 296. Counselor Farmer?
Aye.
Counselor Kilmer?
Aye.
Counselor Marlar?
Aye.
Counselor Matthews?
Aye.
Counselor Miles?
Aye.
Mayor Benetti?
Aye.
Ordinance number 535 has been duly enacted.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is consideration of adopting a policy for reduced street standards. Jim?
Yes, thank you. The council discussed reducing the city's street construction and design standards at the December 22nd work session. Council directed staff to create a policy authorizing staff to approve deviations from city standards on a case-by-case basis. The adoption of the attached resolution and policy would authorize staff, consisting of the city manager, the fire chief, and the public works director, to jointly or working together to consider and approve requested deviations from existing city street construction and design standards. The attached policy does have some suggested minimum standards that should be considered when city staff considers these deviations. And if it pleases council, if you'd adopt resolution 21-01, establishing a policy for reduced street construction and design standards.
Thanks, Jim. I know that we discussed this at the work session, as Jim stated, but council, you have any more comments or suggestions on this, or pleased with it?
Well, I think it's important that we have some language, or that it be at least understood that there will always be those instances where there needs to be an exception, and that's primarily why we're having this conversation. But I have always advocated in these situations where the staff should have the flexibility to make those judgment calls, because there will be those instances where even these recommendations don't fit everything. And I've had that conversation with the city manager, and I told him I'm very comfortable with, I think we discussed 3 staff, the city manager, Jim, and
Fire chief.
and the fire chief. And if they have unanimous consent, I'm not uncomfortable, I'm very comfortable with them making those decisions for these slight deviations, and if there's not, then they can always bring it to the council for an exception. But I just wanted to kind of put that out there, because there will be those times when there's gonna be an exception. Did I say that
Yep.
right, Roger? I mean,
Correct.
because I know you and I have discussed this quite a bit, and I think it's important that staff be able to make some judgment calls.
By the same token, there was quite a lengthy discussion at the work session. I just think that the citizens need to feel reassured that we're not just doing this willy-nilly to get things done quicker. Jim, do you have some examples of where this might be necessary?
Well, where we have existing gravel roads, for example, under existing standards, if somebody came to us, or if the city technically wanted to make improvements to that road, pave it, what have you, we're kind of bound to do so by our existing standards. Make it 28 to 36 foot wide paved surface with curb, gutter, and sidewalk, for example. This policy may allow us to consider if it's a low-traveled road, there's not a lot of pedestrian traffic, maybe there's some steep slopes and fill slopes or cut slopes that we don't want to infringe upon, and so we might consider a reduced standard as far as width.
And I can tell you in the past, I know there's been some instances where there's just not the availability to put sidewalks, gutters, and whole works, and also it becomes so expensive
Cost
for
prohibitive,
the citizens to try to put that in, that it wasn't done. So what happens is you have a gravel road that's not been upgraded, which is not a benefit to the city or the citizens. So I think Phil's correct. I think that staff having some flexibility and understanding where we're at, before their hands were tied and they couldn't even address these type of things. But now that gives them some flexibility, and there's, I think, I know streets will be upgraded because we've changed the restrictions on these streets. So
Well,
I think it'll be better.
we don't want to stifle development in some of those particular areas that
Right.
he has talked about.
Yeah, and if there's a new development, you might have a street that's gravel, and then where the new development is, it's going to be paved, and then so if this could be paved and into a new development, it could be benefit to everybody, so.
So is there any safeguards to make sure that where standards can be met, that will be the required?
That actually would be what we would always strive for. If standards can be met, then we want that to happen.
Yeah,
I think it's more for the anomalies.
yeah.
Like, there's a couple of instances that I recall. It wasn't all that long that you had an improvement district that wanted to form up off of Orchard. And they wanted to pave their roads, and they're willing to pay for it. Although they couldn't get enough support to widen the roads and create the sidewalks and gutters. An additional one is off the dead end of, I think it'd be North Main. You have to go through 2 gravel streets to get to this dead end, and you have some undeveloped properties, and there could be some infill development that could occur there. But the developer couldn't make it pencil out if he had to pave that road. So that project just didn't happen, and here we are, we're in a position, like many other cities around the state that have a housing shortage. It would have been helpful to help make that happen.
Yeah.
But we are also looking at a new subdivision right now. Those roads could be improved to the standards, and those roads should be improved to the standards when that happens.
Yeah, for new developments, I don't think this is not something that we want for new developments.
This
I
is the
agree.
exception, not the rule.
Correct.
Yeah.
Good for clarification.
No, very good. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, how would you like to proceed?
I move we adopt Resolution 21-01, establishing policy for reduced street construction and design standards.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt Resolution 21-01. Any comments or questions? Any others? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes. And the next item is discussion regarding next steps for Jacobs wastewater system operations and maintenance contract amendment 4. So, Jim, are you going to handle this?
Yes, I'll take this. So at the December 22nd work session, council discussed options for the next steps as it relates to the operations and maintenance of the sewer system, the city's sewer system. Council requested staff investigate costs for 3 options. A hybrid option where Jacobs Engineering or Jacobs O&M would perform O&M of treatment plants and pump stations, and the city would self-perform the operations and maintenance of the collection system. Option 2 was the Jacobs option. That's where Jacobs continues to perform the operations and maintenance of the entire sewer system, including the collections. And option 3 is the city option, where the city self-performs operations and maintenance of the entire sewer system, collections, treatment plants, and pump stations. Staff worked with Jacobs in obtaining costs for options 1 and 2, and Jacobs has stated they could further reduce their costs for the hybrid option, or option 1, if the city vacuum trucks could be available for emergencies or scheduled activities. They have further stated that they will honor the 11% management fee for the remainder of the contract. Currently, the contract is for a 10-year term, and next fiscal year ending 22, which is Amendment 4, is year 5 of the contract term. Therefore, including FY 2022, there are 6 more years of that 11% management fee they would honor. The hybrid option involves the city self-performing the collection portion of the sewer system in the coming fiscal year and continue with Jacobs doing the operations and maintenance of the treatment plant and the pump stations. City staff has determined a budget of $712,000 would be needed to self-perform the operations and maintenance of the collection system. Jacobs is proposing to reduce their overall contract by $91,000, which would put Amendment 4 at $2,322,849. This option has a total cost of over $3 million. While Jacobs did offer to negotiate their Amendment 4 further, it does not appear this option is cost effective. The Jacobs option assumes they will continue to perform the O&M services of the entire sewer system, including collections, treatment plants, and pump station. This option has a total cost of just over $2,420,000 and assumes 17 full-time employees. And the city option involves the city terminating the Jacobs contract and self-performing operations and maintenance service for the entire sewer system. The option has a cost range of anywhere from just a little over $2.5 million to $2,687,000. The reason for the range is provided by the city option is because it is unknown at which step employees will be brought on, that is pay step, that they'll be brought on to the city. The high range assumes that the top pay step for all the employees, but this is really not a common practice. Therefore, a more realistic comparison, and the lower number is if staff utilize the step 4 salary structure for the entire 17 full-time employees. Exempt employees have 6 steps and non-exempt employees have 7 steps. Thus, Jacobs appears to be the least cost of the two, of those last 2 options, but there are other considerations that should be factored. Having a contract operator, regardless of who that is, will always pose transparency problems. The contract operator has a company to answer to And oftentimes, this is what drives their decision-making process rather than considering what is best for the city. There have also been deferred maintenance on our system. Much of this maintenance cannot be ignored anymore, as it has a serious impact to the system, and the cost to repair this now, as opposed to performing routine maintenance over the life of the project, is significantly more. An example of this was recently submitted Jacobs' fiscal year ending '22 list of projects. These projects were deemed necessary by Jacobs in order to meet permit and keep up the system. Contractually, this cost estimate is due every year for city staff, and we use this information to assist us in preparing our budget for the coming fiscal year. This year, Jacobs is proposing over $1 million in projects, and staff has never seen a budget this high proposed by Jacobs. When reviewing the list of projects, many of them can be attributed to deferred maintenance. These include such things as broken and failing pipes on the headworks and primary clarifier at Plant 1. Portions of Plant 1 administration building roof is in disrepair. Hypochlorite building at Plant 1 needs doors and window replacements with full plumbing overhaul, and replacement of failed pumps are just a few examples. While there are other reasons, the deferred maintenance compounded with the fact that Jacobs has difficulty retaining staff at all levels are reasons enough to consider this private partnership is no longer working to the benefit of the city. While initially it appears the operations and maintenance costs may be more if managed by the city, there are other costs that are difficult to calculate that may compensate for the increased self-performance costs. That is, vested interest by city in-house staff, money stays in Coos Bay, city has full access to their records at all time, and decisions can be made with the city's, not a corporation's, best interest in mind. So next steps. Staff has discussed this extensively, and while staff acknowledges Jacobs has made significant improvements, staff is frustrated the city has had to get it to this point multiple times in order for the improvements to happen. The city has had to take drastic measures to encourage Jacobs to perform their contracted obligations. While staff understands the immense challenge associated with self-performing both the collection and operations O&M, staff wants to assure council if they decide to self-perform the O&M of the entire asset, staff is up to the challenge and feels strongly they have the right resources and support in-house, and have external consultants currently in place to make this transition successful. If council wishes to continue to contract with Jacobs, staff will work hard to ensure the success of the partnership. And that concludes my presentation.
So before we get into discussions, I understand there's a Jacobs representative here. Did you want to make any comments before we start deliberating? If you just come forth, sir, and give us your name and where you reside, please.
Mr. Mayor, is it okay if I take my mask off?
No.
Okay.
Keep it on, please.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name is Paul Rialt. I'm a Senior Operations Director with Jacobs Engineering. A little bit of my history. I've just joined Jacobs about 5 months ago. I'm the former Public Works Director, Utility Director for the City of Bend, Oregon. I was, though, with Jacobs prior when it was OMI for about 14 years, and I've returned to this job. Yes, I want to talk a little bit about our contract here with Coos Bay. Obviously, it's been a long time. I think we're in year 25. I'm just now coming up to speed on the project, and I think it's a commitment that our President, Steve Meininger, has made, is to put resources here that can work on this project, and that's one of the things he asked me. I've been in the business for about 40 years now, all wastewater and water treatment, and asked me to come in, take a look, and come alongside some of the other regional support that he has here also to see if we can help out on this project. Obviously, you've got a big decision here tonight to make on whether to, three options before you. Obviously, we're hoping that you would choose to stay with the Jacobs team. We've had some struggles in some areas, I understand. I don't know all the history of this project. I'm coming up to speed right now. I've spent about 8 days in December here, And I'm here now for this week, and I'll be returning for a more lengthy stay here at the end of January to help out in any way I can. So I'm coming up to speed on all the areas. There's been some things that Jim mentioned tonight. One is staffing. Staffing is an issue in our industry right now. As you look across the country, there's a silver tsunami, they say, with a lot of retirements happening in our profession, and everybody's having trouble filling utility positions, primarily water and wastewater treatment. So we'll be working closely with that to try and fill some positions. Right now, we've got our project manager position that is vacant at the moment. We have some regional folks who are filling in those roles. The issue with staffing right now across the country is so serious that even the EPA is involved. They have started an initiative also to help the water and wastewater sector recruit people into our profession so that some of these much-needed vacancies across the country can be filled. So we will be relying on our corporate-wide folks across the United States to try and fill positions here, whether they're operator positions or management positions. Unfortunately, this is a remote location here in Coos Bay, and it's tough to bring some folks in. And there's not a lot of folks in the local area that have the necessary certifications that we would require at this facility. So staffing is an issue, and but we are intent on working on it. And if we get an Amendment 4, then we would hopefully want to bring someone in here permanently for a lengthy period of time. Also, I think I've talked to Steve Meiniger today. He's our president. I think he's presented before the City Council. Steve's committed to this project, and he's committed to continue to put resources towards it, as is our regional manager, Efron Rodriguez. He is also committed to that as well, to put whatever resources here we need so that this project can continue as well. If you do choose a transition, obviously we'll work under our contracts to help with that transition process. But I certainly hope that tonight the vote would be that we could stay here, whether it be under the hybrid approach or we have full scope that we have now.
Council, any questions for Paul?
I'd like to make just a quick comment. I'm sure you have sensed that there's an enormous amount of frustration on our part.
I've watched the last two council meetings. Yes, I sense there is some frustration, sir.
And, you know, and we're the ones that get the phone calls when the public notice goes out that there was a spill or an exceedance, or, you know, because those are notices that go out to the public. And we're the ones that get, you know, that catch the wrath of the citizens, because our citizens depend on the water in the bay to be clean. There's oysters out there, there's fish, and people depend on that. And they lose their they lose their their trust that the water is going to be clean. And so there's a lot of frustration on our part. And I sense, just from listening to some of the staff talking, there's some frustration with them too, because there's been a lot of turnover with your company. People have come and gone. Promises have been made that weren't kept. And, you know, so we're kind of sitting here in a very difficult position, and you're in an unenviable position yourself. I get it. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there and let you know that this is not an easy thing for us to try to consider. But we have to do what we think is best for the city of Coos Bay. And I know the relationship with Jacobs is a long one. But that relationship started with CH2M Hill and has evolved to now Jacobs. So I rely on staff to give me input, and I don't know how the other counselors are going to feel about it, but I rely heavily on what the staff tells me. And that's kind of where I sit.
And just a continuation of what Councilor Marler stated, and I do have a question. You know, the issue of transparency is very important to this council. It's very important to our staff, because we want our citizens to feel assured that what is happening in this governance is being done to their expectations. Transparency came up in the report that Mr. Hosley gave. How will you address that issue of transparency
Like I say, I'm
if
new to
you
the
continue? in
Yes,
this?
I'm new to the project. I don't know what it is right now that the city staff are not getting. My understanding is they have access to some of our software that we have there. We've got a program that monitors our process, a program that monitors our maintenance, and I believe there's also SCADA as well, which is a supervisory control and data acquisition system. I don't know how much access they have. I understand they have it. So that, I'd be curious if we had a list, if there's anything that they've asked for and they're not receiving, I would like to see that list, and we can certainly work with them in getting in that information.
And I don't know where that level of transparency is. That's probably a question for Jennifer or Jim. But part of that transparency question could be how quickly they do receive something. If there's a request for information, if it takes long periods of time, they may need an answer now, not months down the road.
Back to your original question, if I'm here and working with this project, you're exactly right. The client calls for information. We should get that information as soon as possible to them. Taking consideration, there's different levels of information sometimes too. There may be emergency information. As Councilor Marta says, you may have a person calling in and you want to give them a quick response. We understand that. Maybe other information can wait a little bit. Sometimes our staff, we may have to get with our staff. It can't be a management answer. For instance, we may have a collections crew in the field running a VACCON unit. It's loud. They don't take up our phone calls right away. So sometimes things can take a little while, but they shouldn't take days or weeks, that's for sure.
So you say if you're here, you're probably the sixth or seventh or more representatives from Jacobs to come speak to this council. And at some point, this council we can't keep making the same decision and expect different results.
Yeah. There's been a lot of change in our industry. People retiring, as I said earlier. I know you've got a new regional manager or manager of projects for this region in the Northwest. I think he came on about a year and a half ago. That was as of retirement. Myself, right now, I'm here on an interim basis to try and help this project out with the other regional staff that are here as well. And right now, I'm committed with the company to at least through the end of this contract year to help out and try and find some key positions that need to be filled at this facility.
Anyone else?
Drew?
Drew?
Okay. Jim, could you remind me on the files that we have asked for in the past? I believe it was historic records on plant performance and expectations of repair schedules that we hadn't been able to get. Was that correct?
I think we've had issues with getting, not only some of that operational data, but we've been having significant problems meeting contract with even providing proposed budgets, maintenance plans. Those. Even most recently, the one that comes to mind is that there's been questions about the operations of the brand new wastewater treatment plant that's nearly $24 million, and it's had multiple exceedances, and that's probably an understatement. And there's been questions of whether it's an operational issue, whether it's a design issue, or whether it's an influent issue. And so the city is paying above and beyond our contract costs to do an influent study, and then also to do a study on the disinfectant system to see if, because that was an alternative that was put in place by the contractor, to see if we could nail down what issue it is or a combination of issues. And while we were paying for the influence study, part of it was being conducted by Jacobs, and staff had a difficult time of even getting raw data so that we could help determine what the issue is so that we could address it. And it took quite a bit to get that information. And even when we do get it, or when a meeting's set up, we cannot get the data in time so that we can have an independent third party review it to assist us.
And Roger, just a question in there. While you were conducting this study and trying to get this information, we had exceedance issues, and we had other issues at that plant.
I'm not sure I can answer that, but I know our city engineer. It's been difficult. The turnover's been difficult. And part of that, we believe it's compensation related. And I've had the discussion with OMI about the issue about a remote area. The reality is, we successfully recruited a city engineer out of Southern California. We successfully recruited a public works director out of Arizona, who's been here 10 years, more than 10 years. And 10 years, we've successfully recruited many employees. I'm not from here. I've been here more than 25 years. People come here once they begin working here. They stay, one, because we compensate them well, and two, because it's a great area. So we don't have that same issue, so I'm left with going back to it's a compensation issue. And I won't discount that there is an issue with retirements. I know that's occurring. We're seeing that in all areas. But that's why we pay a little bit more, and that's why we retain our people. We maybe have a problem with we retain too many because we end up paying at the upper scale.
So I'm going to make more of a statement than a question because I think the horse might be dead, but I'm going to keep kicking it. What we looked at this year already is that Jacobs came in one in a 33% increase with no expression of how they were going to improve the performance. My assumption there has to be that they were going to keep giving us the same poor level of performance that we were receiving, but for 33% more cost. We have only seen an increase in services and a catch up on repairs that were already overdue since we started having this discussion about letting go of Jacobs in some form or another. It's too little too late to me. The absence of records only complicates the issue of when we're considering leaving because of poor performance. Now we have to try and catch up to what we weren't told on top of the difficulties of making the change. But from what has been presented to us, both by Jacobs' performance and by staff reports, I don't see there being an option to continue on with Jacobs. That's not to beat you up, Paul. You just got in here 5 months ago, but that's what I feel we've been seeing, and that's what I feel needs done.
Paul, any more comments before we get into more deliberation or not?
Just real quick, City Manager Graddock talked a little bit about the Plant 2 that we have out there, and I think it's fair to say that we may have some toxin coming into that facility. We've had meetings with city staff about that. Whether or not that is resulting in the exceedances that we have, or I should say some of the high back T levels we've had, it's possibly due to a toxin coming in. I think I heard rumors that the city may be doing an industrial waste survey to kind of look at that, but I think it's we're a little early to say that this is attached to any operations out there. It's a good plant. The UV system for disinfection is a good system to have. But I think before we cast any, who's responsible for what, we really need to find out what's coming in the influent of that facility and see if there is any toxins coming in that facility that could be impacting this new system.
So I understand that. And so, Plant 2 was designed and engineered by Jacobs and pretty much built because of their specs. And now they're operating it. And so we're in violation with DEQ, and we will be fined. And we're going to be absorbing those fines. I don't think Jacobs is. Because I think Jacobs has stated that there's some outside contexts that have violated this and that it's not your responsibility. So, these things just keep adding up, as Drew stated. It rubs us the wrong way and we start losing trust. I know you've been here for 5 months only and you're here taking the brunt of this, and I'm sure that we could give you a lot more. I was frustrated, and so was this whole council with Mr. Rodriguez stating, that they're going to continue on with 33%. That's just the way it was, and we can take it or leave it. And that's basically, I'm going to summarize it, but that's what he basically told us. until we just said, okay, we're not going to accept it. Did we get some, cooperation from Jacobs? How long have we been negotiating? 8 months, 9 months?
9 months at least.
9 months we've been negotiating this. And on top of it, we put an excessive amount of staff time that we can't even put a dollar amount on. So, I hate to burden you with all this, but you're here representing Jacobs. So, but there's a lot of frustration here. So I'm not sure how the rest of the council is going to deliberate and how we're going to make a decision, but that's
Can I just say one more thing? When you're talking about Plant 2, and that's a, brand-new plant, as you said, design, operated, it seems like the figuring out these problems that we have had since that plant went online have been reactionary by Jacobs instead of proactive, and pushed by our staff to say, hey, we have a problem. We're hearing from our citizens, we're hearing from our council. I mean, to me, yeah, we got to react when something happens, but instead of, trying to get ahead of it, it just seems like we've been, it happened, now we're going to react. That's concerning to me. It's a brand-new plant. And that breaks down that confidence and that trust that we have with our contractor. Our contractor should be coming to us saying, we don't know why this is happening, and we need to figure out why.
I have an example for that, just happened within the last 2 weeks. I've been with Jacobs for 5 months. I've been associated with this project for about a month. But we did come forward with a report here just recently on the UV channel where these UV lamps sit in. And we did a routine inspection inside that channel and found that there were some issues with the concrete. We did bring it to the client's attention with pictures and a report. And that's the type of proactive stuff I think you're talking about. And that was done within the last few weeks. And so I know I saw an email today, I believe, that came back to the city from the Jacobs engineers. They did a little research on behalf of the city to look and see what might be causing this degradation of the concrete. It's very premature, being a brand-new plant. It should last a lot longer. So they are looking into that on behalf of the city and working with I believe the folks, Sika was the name. I don't know if they were the concrete people. I'm sure the client will be able to share more of that. But that's the type of stuff that I'm involved with, and I think the team did a good job in putting this report together. It was not a request, but through routine inspection, put the report together, complete with pictures, and submitted that to the client. And to give them a heads up.
So is Jacobs willing to pay the fine?
I can't speak to the fines. I'd have to look in the permit. That's obviously up to people above me. I can't say pay the fine or not. I would certainly, in my estimation, I would work with the regulatory people. This is a new facility, and I've started up multiple new facilities across the country before. They all come with their share of issues, and in some cases, the regulatory people have worked with us, and in some cases, they have not worked with us.
Well, I think DEQ's past that point of trying to work this out. I think they've indicated that there's been so many violations from the letter that we received from them that there's going to be a fine. They pretty much stated that there will be a fine.
That's correct. I had a phone conversation with a DEQ representative. He was sharing with me that he did send me a copy of their most recent audit of Plant 1. In that case, they're going to issue us a warning, which is generally what happens before they fine. In the case of Plant 2, he said there's multiple exceedances. That will probably not be a warning, but he could not give me a fine amount because he's going to have to add them up.
And Plant 1, just for clarification, Plant 1 is a plant that we know is going to need some upgrades. And so we know that we're dealing with some issues and that we're going to have a potential violation. But Plant 2, like we said, we built a brand-new plant, and this should not be happening. Anyway, Paul, so I don't know if you want to add anything else, but we're going to just have a discussion on this, and I'm not sure where the council is going to go. But
We look forward to the DEQ audit on Plant 2. The audit that DEQ did do on Plant 1 did say that Plant 1 was well operated and maintained, according to DEQ. So that was nice to see that.
Mm-hmm. But we also know that Plant 1 has some issues that need to be dealt with. But Plant
It's a
2
66-year-old plant.
We should not be in that position with Plant 2, right?
66 years old. It has some issues, and it deserves an upgrade, and I think DEQ made that pretty clear in their audit as well.
Right.
So if I could make just one additional comment, and this deals with Plant 2. In in prior discussions and dealings with, I think this last amendment was number 3.
That's correct.
Part of that substantial increase that Jacobs asked for, and correct me if I'm wrong, Roger, was because they said that the plant needed additional personnel. And we were assured by Jacobs when the plant was designed and built that it's the latest, greatest, and the technology would not require as many people as some of the older technology. And they reversed course and said, we need more money because we need to hire more people. And when we asked why this is supposed to be a plant that doesn't require that many people, they said, well, it's got so much technology, it requires more observation. These are the kinds of things that erode the confidence that we have. You know, we were told, let's build this plant because it'll be great, the technology won't require a lot of people. And now we're being told we need to hire a bunch of people. So am I wrong? Did I mischaracterize that?
No, you're correct.
So these are the things that we deal with in trying to make a decision for what we think is best.
Having been on your side of the fence recently, I understand the decisions you have to make and the things you have to consider. I wasn't part of those negotiations. I don't know what was involved in that. So I really can't speak to that.
And that's more for your own information anyway,
Thank you.
because I know you're fairly new with our system, so.
Thank you.
Well, and I think you said you were a public works director.
Correct.
You're an engineer. So
I'm not an engineer.
No, you're not an
I was a public works
engineer.
director, utility director in Bend for the last 12 years.
But you've been in the position where you've had to work with, you know, somebody that runs and operates a treatment system.
In our case, we ran our system, but in that position, I also know when we designed and built equipment, they didn't always turn out like we expected, and whether it be additional staffing, more chemicals than we had originally anticipated. In Bend, we were a $60 million upgrade to our wastewater treatment plant. We went with a new technology, and we had some issues with it. Construction issues, we had all types of issues, and other parts of the city as well with some of the major upgrades. Built a new water treatment plant while I was there, a $75 million treatment plant, along with pipelines. We expected it to not be as staff dependent, and it turned out that it was more staff dependent after it was constructed, and used more electricity than originally the engineers estimated. So I know with some of these projects, big projects, you know, engineers can come in and give you the evaluations and say it's going to take this many people, cost this much. That's great. We need that estimate up front. But in the end, when you start running it, it's a different story. And sometimes it might, you know, take less people, more people, or less power, more power. We don't know until we truly get in there and start operating it.
Thank you.
Well, you're talking about when the city accepted those responsibilities because they went and they handled everything themselves, right? But if you were contracting out, wouldn't the contractor be responsible?
I would work with, if it's a new facility, and in cases, I have a couple facilities when I was with OMI before, we worked with the city, you know, we gave estimates. Okay,
Right.
well, let's get this plan up and running first, and we'll see how it goes.
Correct.
And then we'll come to, we had a temporary agreement set up, and then once we get, you know, a year under our belts, okay, what do we truly need for staff? What do we truly need for power?
How long have Plant 2 been up and going?
I think it came online 2 years ago, but it wasn't turned over to us for 1 year.
So don't you think that was plenty of time to have things worked out?
If you don't have any issues like the toxicity issue, maybe that's coming in the influent right now. You know, we don't know where that's coming from. So that right now is a big question mark for me, is what's impacting the process there. We shouldn't be having the hits that we're having with the new plant. So I hope this industrial waste survey finds out what might be being discharged into it. I know one of the reports, we had a recent Teams call with the city and their consultants, and there's a pattern to what we're seeing. I'll let the staff share that with you, because if somebody is doing something, we don't want to tip anybody off, but there's a certain day of the week that we're seeing this happening, and I think once we can get that known and find out where it's coming from, I think operations there will turn somewhat
Okay.
for the better.
Well, I appreciate you looking into it, Paul, and coming down here and attending our meeting, so.
Mayor, City
Anyone
Council,
else?
thank you.
Any other comments at the moment?
No.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Thank
City
you.
Council, thank you very much.
So council, we've been talking about this for quite a while and going over things, and we've had different scenarios, and so I guess we know Drew basically has started this discussion, and we know where he stands, and I guess I need to find out where everyone else feels.
Well, I've been somewhat hesitant because we do also have a fiscal responsibility to the citizens, so I've been worried about the cost. Looking at these estimates, I'm a little disappointed because I was hoping that we could take over collections and get that under our feet before taking over the whole operation, but that's obviously not feasible. I feel like the writing's on the wall. I mean, we can't keep putting our trust in a company that is not performing, and I think we need to move forward with the city taking it over. With that being said, I hope we're putting the trust in the city staff, and I hope you know that our expectations aren't changing. Well, they are changing. They're getting increasing. We have increased expectations now. So I think we need to move forward.
Stephanie?
I probably couldn't say it any better. You know, I probably am one of those folks that trusts implicitly that when we sign an agreement and we shake hands to do things, that everybody's going to hold up their end of the bargain. So that's a difficult thing for me to say, but the reality is we have a confidence, a break in the confidence, and I really have to support the staff, but I think Councilor Miles said it. We have a high expectation, whether it's Jacobs or it's our staff, and you know, I think I appreciate the cost comparisons that came out. Basically, the difference is only what, about 300,000? 200?
And I would state that that's probably going to be high. Staff was very conservative when undertaking a cost analysis for the city staff to run it. We have a union represented staff for the most part. They have a 7-step collective bargaining agreement. We generally hire at step 1 based on experience. We never hire above, well, I won't say never, because I can recall one time. We generally never hire an experienced person above step 3. This calculation, the range started at step 4 and went to step 7. We took a look at all of our represented ASTME employees, some of which have been here nearly 30 years and others which are fairly new, and the average is step 5. But that's over a course of many years. Here you'd be taking over an operation. You may be hiring some of existing employees that works for Jacobs, or you may be hiring new ones. I expect it'll be much lower on years 1 through maybe 3.
But also, we have no guarantee on cost from Jacobs. I mean, we looked at a 30% increase and then had to negotiate and the operating costs. There's nothing that states that those costs won't increase in the next couple of years, correct?
I believe yes and no. In my discussions with Steve, the president of OMI, we have at least a guarantee not to exceed costs for Amendment 4, but there's no such thing for Amendment 5.
Right.
I think they've agreed to reduce their management fee to 11% for the remainder of the 10-year contract, but the annual cost of living increase or adjustment is still subject to change.
And operational cost as they see fit, right?
Correct. I think the other issue is when there are things that are now being deemed out of scope, and those are extra costs.
Correct.
Or those are add-on costs, where that might have not been a case when it was CH2 or or CH2M, but they are now.
So Amendment 4 goes for how long?
It would actually, Amendment 4 would start for fiscal year ending '22, which would begin this July.
Correct.
So in 1 year, you could be at the same boat.
All right. Stephanie, any other comments?
I would just encourage the members, the citizens who wish to see this estimate, cost comparison. I know it took some time for our staff to put that together. That is online with the agenda, and I would encourage you to go take a look at it.
Can I ask a quick question, Mayor?
Sure, of course.
So the $1 million in suggested repairs, does staff think those are legitimate repairs that we're going to be facing as well?
Yes, they're legitimate.
Are we responsible for those costs, whether we stick with Jacobs or take this over?
Yes.
Phil?
I think we find ourselves in an unfortunate position. Jacobs has been a really good partner for 20-plus years.
We're on our 25th year.
25 years. And now that has eroded in a very short period of time. Well, I say short, compared to 25 years. So I think it's unfortunate that we're at this point. And my problem is, change is always kind of scary, because the unknown is fearful. But I concur with Councilor Miles and Councilor Kilmer that we're kind of at a point now where we got backed into a corner, and I place a lot of trust in what staff is telling me. I don't think that there's anything going on with staff other than they want what's best for the city. And I have no reason to believe otherwise. And that's kind of where I sit is I really, really, really lean on what the staff says, that they're capable of handling this and that they want to handle this. So that's kind of the position that I'm in.
I'm not sure we want to handle this.
Well, and there's one other comment. And I asked Roger this yesterday. I called him and asked him, I said, so in these estimate numbers that you alluded to, Stephanie, that number, does it include, if we stick with Jacobs, does that include how much money staff time is spending with Jacobs? And that number doesn't reflect that, because we don't know how much that is. So I really don't know how much more we're spending because we're paying staff to do things that they really shouldn't be doing. Does that characterize it pretty much the way you and I talked about it?
That's correct. Every year we do activity-based accounting, budget purposes, so that we know what funds to pay which staff for what activities, but we do not keep track of time actually spent, such as possibly, an attorney who keeps track of time so he can bill properly.
Not for the city.
And we appreciate that. But we don't do that. But I know that our city engineer and our public works director is spending an inordinate amount of their time, and as was some of our other staff members, in trying to manage the contract, or trying to get information.
So Nicole, or how much time is Public Works Director put into that figure? 5%, 6%?
It's probably a little bit higher than that.
Yeah.
And my last comment would be, is it Paul? My last comment was, I really feel bad for you, Paul, because you're kind of the guy that's getting you're getting bombarded with all of this from us because of our frustration. So my sympathies to you for having to listen to our frustration. And I'm pretty sure you understand where we're coming from, having been in that realm in the private sector, or in the public utility sector before. That's all I have.
Carmen?
Yeah, my comments have been fairly quiet so far, but I just wanted to once again reiterate that a significant investment was made by our community members, and we have a responsibility to make that work. Unfortunately, the metrics that we had all agreed upon in this relationship have not been met, and had they been met, I would have been fine moving forward, like you said, with the trust. If costs were detailed and within reason, and when there was cost increase, they were clearly defined as something that we could see and be tangibly working towards, I could understand moving forward. I believe we need the controls to adequately perform the responsibilities that ultimately lie on the city's shoulders. And right now, I don't feel like we have the controls. Cost aside, we need to get these issues resolved that we're having exceedances on. It's just, in my mind, I mean, I understand getting a new system online. You're going to have issues. I've dealt with that at the brewery as well. Very similar kind of thing. You get a new piece of equipment or a whole new system. It's tough to get it running. But in my world, my suppliers, if things didn't work out right, they'd send people down, make sure I had it all set up right, and then fix it if they didn't. And that doesn't seem to be happening right now. So I think we need to have detailed reporting and the ultimate discretion to make the changes that are necessary to fix these issues. And since we are the ones responsible, we need all of those controls. And I have full trust that our city staff will have the community's health first and foremost. And, costs will be what they will. And I understand that we might have to have some tough days on budget stuff in the future, but I think we need to make sure that health is number one, health and safety, and that responsibility I take very seriously, and I want to make sure that we are doing the best we can for all of our community members on behalf of their investment. So at this point, I'd just really like to have full control of the plant itself, meaning the city staff and those people that we hire. So that's where I'm at.
Thanks, Carmen. So Nicole, what percentage do we have for?
So in this fiscal year, and this is actually a chart that's in our budget.
Right.
It's towards the end of the budget. You can look at that. In fiscal year 21, Jim sits at about 43% is dedicated to wastewater across. So that's plant 1, plant 2, admin, collections for sanitary and storm, split across there. Jennifer's at 83%. So significant amount of time expected to be spent there, but not just managing the contract and those contractors.
Correct. So we also talked about having hired a project manager, continue with Jacobs, which we're going to do anyway because we're talking about a FOD program, right?
Correct.
Was that figured into this?
No,
Okay, so that would be above on Jacobs or above on our figure cost, right?
that's correct.
All right,
And I think an environmental specialist as well, that helps run the FOG program.
right. So, but that was preempted because we were having issues with Jacobs to begin with. I remember discussing this a couple years ago. So anyway, I agree with my counselors that, and I was around when this first started, Paul. We came on with OMI, and it was the right thing to do, and there was no regrets, and we had a good relationship. But Jacobs is not the same company that we started with and progressed with. And when I came back on the council, things were still going pretty good, but they deteriorated quickly. And the main thing, I think, out of all this is that we just don't have the trust and faith in Jacobs any longer. And I think that's been stated here pretty clear. And it's not with you, but, The final straw for me was when Mr. Rodriguez was up there and we were having a discussion and he just was adamant, that's where it was and take it or leave it. And then things changed after that, but you know, it was surprising to me that we had to get to that point to even get in negotiating, Jacob, to get to negotiate whatsoever. And they've been doing this for 9 months. And now to see that we're looking at all this OMI cost to repair things. And I know that this council and staff, and we've been putting, I don't know how much in, $1 million on an annual basis into our system? Pretty close.
More than that, far more.
Or more. So to see that we've been putting that into the system to maintain it based on, I think, OMI or Jacob's recommendation, and then find out that we're still behind another $1 million that we're having come into. So these things have just added up for me, and I just think it's time that we take this back on. And if there's any repercussions, then we'll have them ourselves. I mean, like, we're going to have a fine from DEQ. It's not going to be borne by the cost of Jacob, so we'll be bearing that cost. And because we've been told that there's reasons that Jacob should not accept this. But we can go on, and there's no labor, as far as I'm concerned, to belabor this any further. It's just time to say it was good while it lasted, and it's time to move on and take this on ourselves. And as they stated, I trust the staff. They've been negotiating and talking and doing an evaluation, and we've even hired a outside contractor to help us do some evaluation on how to move forward on this. So I think it's time, and we try to do this in sections, as Councilor Miles mentioned, doing the collections, but that even penciled out not properly. So taking the whole thing on at this time is just the right step for us to do. So I think that's about it.
I think at this point in time, and then obviously that we understand your direction. I think it would be wise, given the expressed concerns of the council, to exercise your no-fault option in your current amendment and provide 180 days notice.
So I need a motion on that then. Is there anything specific we need to do in any fashion, Nate, or just state that?
Well, you can state that, but I think we need to send it to Jacob.
So you'll be sending that?
I will, we'll
Yes.
get it done.
Okay, so we can direct staff to move forward and do that? Motion, somebody?
So the
I'll
motion
move
is,
to give 180 days notice, staff to provide to Jacobs.
Okay,
Second.
and we'll direct staff to send them that in writing. Okay, any other comments or discussions on this?
I have a question.
Sure.
On these cost estimates, do those fall with, I'm not sure who to ask this, do those fall within the consultant's rate increase prediction?
They are. We did do a little bit different changes because at this point in time, we know what the PERS rates are going forward. There were estimations with him. He was working with fiscal year 20 salaries. We're estimating what next year's salaries. So we're really close, but just keep those kinds of things in mind. There's a slight variation. You won't be able to take his numbers previously presented equal to what you're just seeing tonight.
But I also think, Rob, that brought up by Roger, is that these steps that they started at, and the staff was being very conservative, we're not going to probably restart any of those steps. And so, you know, there's going to be some, the costs aren't going to be exact. You know, there'll be some flexibility here, I think. And also, I think there's some cross work that we can do within public works in different areas. And, you know, is that not true? Wastewater, maybe parks? I mean, we have other people to help if necessary, right?
We currently do that with our streets and our parks personnel when there's a major project or
Sure.
an emergency response. They usually are cross-trained. And I've assumed some of that will occur as well, so. Although we will have to be careful because there are certain parameters within our union contract.
Sure, I understand. But I think also that we can have some stability with our, the employees in wastewater. From what I can gather and have gotten from some comments is that because of the pay structure that's being done, it's hard for Jacobs to maintain staff. And I think Roger alluded to that earlier, that I think we live in a great area and by we've proven that we can have the right employees and good employees here. I just want the citizens to understand that this is something that wasn't easy for us to do, but I think it's the best thing in the long run, and it'll be the best for us to move on and take this over. And Paul, thank you for attending, and sorry that you're hearing the brunt of all this, the behest of Jacobs. So anyway, we have a motion.
Can I just make one comment before we take a vote?
Sure.
I think the bottom line is the ultimate thing. I'm a sponge when it comes to comments on stories that are running digitally, and I have not seen one comment that this has been covered, this discussion has been covered in the news media, on social media, on our page, that this was a possible point that we would have to be at in making this decision, and I haven't seen one comment that said you're making a mistake. So I feel that that is an important point, that the citizens are with us on this.
Yeah, and as Roger said, you know, this is probably one of the most difficult decisions and hardest decision this council is going to have to make, and it hasn't been an easy one. So we didn't take it lightly. And anyway, all that being said, anything else? Anyone? Drew, anything? All right.
No, good.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor and a second, and I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, passes. Thank you. Next item is city manager's report.
Well, I'm going to keep it brief because you're going to have to listen to me in executive session here in a few minutes. A couple of things. You know, we received some grant fundings from the state for implementation of House Bill 2003 and 2001. I think we received about $110,000. And your community development administrator, Carolyn Johnson, has requested that we try and schedule a joint work session with the Planning Commission to work out as we move forward on the housing pre-production strategy and the comp plan development changes. What we're suggesting, because I know when we hold combined work sessions with them, it takes away capacity for the council to deal with matters that come before you. We're suggesting that you hold your joint work session on the second Tuesday of the month, which would be the night of the Planning Commission. So if you're amenable to it, we would actually schedule one on March the 9th. Okay?
Does that seem all right for everyone at this point?
At this point, my calendar's kind of open.
Still.
Yeah.
We will send
Still
something
open.
to you on that, but this allows them to do the necessary noticing that they'll have to do to make sure the public's aware and plus to get everything in place. And then for our co-chairs of the homeless work group, I would just suggest that we go ahead and set a date for an upcoming meeting of the work group, now that you have new members on it. Traditionally, you've met on Thursdays, and generally from noon till 1:30. I was going to suggest January 21st, but we also have some DEI training that day for staff that I've just signed up for. So I'd like to suggest the 28th, and that'll give us time to prepare for the meeting.
I'm fine with that.
Sounds good. Then we will go ahead and get the members noticed who's on there and let them know that our first meeting has been set. And then I'll reserve the rest of my comments for executive session.
Okay. Council comments. Drew?
None today.
All right. Carmen?
I guess I'm just really excited to hear that the homeless work group is going to start getting back to meetings. The issues related to homelessness right now seem to be one of the main concerns that I hear from our community. And so I think it's long due that we have more meetings and we start working on the issues that we're seeing in our community. So that pretty much is it. I'm really glad that we have a focus group
Yeah, and I
dedicated to
think it's important for the council to know, if you are interested in attending, anyone on the council, you're more than welcome to do so, so.
Great.
I don't feel that it's not necessary to, come and see what's going on, so, I mean, we have good representation, so, and I appreciate all the hard work that Drew and Stephanie have put into this, and then on top of the Rogers and Waste there too, so, anyway.
Yeah.
Anything else, Carmen?
Not at the moment, at
Okay.
least not right, yeah.
Phil?
I'm gonna, I'm gonna put a shameless plug in here. On Friday, which was the first and a holiday, the water line coming into my house burst, and I have the insurance. So, long story short, I had a conversation today with the regional manager, Dennis Lyons, the guy that came and talked to us. And I learned from him, it was interesting, in the last 12 months, in the city of Coos Bay, they have replaced 24 sewer laterals that were insured. They've replaced 30 repairs to interior plumbing that was covered. And I think he said there were 15 water service lines from the street to the house that they've repaired. To the tune of over $75,000 they've spent in this community in 12 months on covered repairs. So I would say if you don't have the service line insurance, you should probably get it, because I was covered.
Good plug.
And that's all I have.
Okay. Stephanie?
That's some peace of mind. I just want to say, serve as the liaison for the Coos Bay Downtown Association, and also serve on that board. And I received my invitation today for their annual meeting. Obviously, there have been some positive things that have come out of COVID, and that is we don't always meet in person. So generally, there would be a nice gathering, but because of COVID restrictions, they are doing virtual things. That's why it's an invitation. But ballots went out for the board of directors. The other positive thing that has come out of COVID, and we saw it with Drew and I saw it with the homeless work group interviews, as well as the people that we've appointed to committees, is that people are becoming more active in volunteering in their community, and they have a full slate of people on the Coos Bay Downtown Association ballot for board positions that are open, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
And they actually have a bigger board because of that. So those ballots for people who are members, if you're a member of the Coos Bay Downtown Association, a business or individual who's a member of the Coos Bay Downtown Association, you should have received that ballot in your email. And it's a fillable form and easy to submit. And they are due before 1/21, before the 21st of this month. And then once those ballots are counted, they'll seat the people that are on that committee, or on that board. And that's really all I have.
Thanks, Stephanie. Rob?
I just want to thank Jim and Jennifer and any other staff that's been involved with this wastewater for all this time and all your hard work on it. And I appreciate your willingness to take this on. And I look forward to seeing the improvements that we can make. And since I failed to do it last meeting, I need to recognize our outstanding fire department and Fire Chief Anderson and the crew that helped the Community Coalition of Empire with the tree lighting ceremony, because they are very appreciative. That's all I have.
Just going to follow up, I just want to thank the council and staff for, 2020. I know it wasn't easy and difficult. What I admire about this council is that they're always willing to step up and take on the tough issues, and we've done many of those, and we did one tonight. So anyway, I just want to thank everyone for all their hard work, as Rob had mentioned. Anyway, that's the end of my comments and the end of this council meeting, and we will be going into urban renewal. And I want to thank everyone for attending, and Paul, again, thank you for attending and coming down. Do appreciate it. So that's it. Thank you.
Huh? Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break, and then we will convene the Urban Renewal Agency.
glad I had insurance.
Yeah.
Phil? I didn't think the interior portion of that was available yet.
Yeah, you can get interior water, you can have all, in fact, they even have a service now where they will cover your electrical.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they'll cover electrical, plumbing.
Uh-huh.
I got all the plumbing. I got the exterior, the interior, and the sewer line.
I don't know if I did any of the interior, but I did do that.
All my electrical is up to code. I've upgraded all that over the last 10 years.
Tri-County's coming to take a hold on these easy ones tomorrow.
Really?
To fix the pipe underneath.
Well, believe it or not, that's their contract.
DEI training?
That's who they use.
They
is
use
Tri-County.
local.
I didn't think it was available. I read that.
Putting us at risk. Yeah, interior
space.
water line, exterior water line, and sewer line.
Okay, question, still posed.
We'll have to look and
Have you
see
guys done
what does it cost
Maybe
you
I
a
should
month?
postpone it.
DEI
It's,
training?
well, for, yeah, for all three of them, it's, it's like 18, 19 bucks a month.
Yeah, I
Have
don't
you- has the fire department done DEI training?
It's less than
out there,
$20.
Just on your own?
Wow, that's cheap.
And I told him, I said, if you paid out 75
That's what we're
in the
gonna be
last
doing
12 months,
with
you didn't collect
CIS.
that in premium. He said, hey, we took the survey. It's insurance.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you guys just haven't, the reason why I'm asking.
We
is
should
because
probably
the department has a training
publicize that
module.
again in our newsletter.
Yes, that's what we're asking. That's a lot, 24 sewer laterals, that's 2 a month.
Well, just to
No.
do my sewer line.
Never mind, I withdraw the question
Quote
mark.
that I had was $2,300.
You're not successfully answering it, so I know the answer is no.
Fortunately,
Closest thing would be.
it connected on the property, so we
The
could.
police department does the
We
training
didn't have to go,
that they've assigned, and they've done some.
shut down the street.
And so I don't wanna pay
We were,
overtime
because it collapsed
and
on
then do
our
more
property.
training,
They
and
use
they've
that,
already taken
that
some.
pipe, that clay pipe.
Because
My
the
garage-
CIS free
Rural
is no
areas,
longer
they were
free
trying to
once
get rid
it
of it
takes
World War
more.
II conduit pipe they used on planes.
Because
And they have the surplus of it, and so,
And they're
there, and the
fairly,
reason.
they're fairly
Yeah.
short pieces.
Yeah.
There's
They're
lots
too
of
sensitive.
So, and I live out in Empire, which is sandy, so it basically had,
trained, and
you
so
know,
we
sucked
can
around
use
that pipe. And
politically
then
incorrect
the
as
pipe collapsed, busted up,
possible.
and it was still functioning as a pipe, but every
I'm
once in a while,
surprised
when my
because
son was over,
the
and he
lieutenant
was
chief also said
way
that
too
the
much
police
toilet
department,
paper,
a lot of
catch on
people
a
really
piece of
offended by that
clay
survey.
Did you take the survey?
pipe. Got to run
Yeah.
a street down, but yeah, we
Maybe I
were
was reading
lucky
too much
that it
into
didn't
it,
go
but
into the street,
Seemed
because
like
it would have been,
everybody kind of felt like it was.
Oh, yeah. Tons of money.
so it was worth it to,
we are
to just do the exterior
Really
on
insensitive.
the thing.
Heads up, if
I
anybody ever
think
needs
it's
a power
very
sweep.
important
Oh, you do?
Oh.
Good to know.
for your.
Well, you know, I've had enough issues
You have
where,
the
years,
Because what,
Education's one thing, we shouldn't forget
where
who we are.
you shouldn't, but it, and I was in this boat before. I had a kid who went to school in Ashland and had
stormwater zone
a
to
advisor who has been
and then it would back up the sewer.
full in learning, like,
Completely full, so you couldn't flush the toilets. It was, everybody was inside,
Privilege,
music
which you
night,
don't know that
everybody
they're-
drinking and using the toilets. And
someone else.
it is crazy, it's crazy. So, you know, I'd have to call all these
They
people
can't
to
just
get them
apply
down here to
online
help me.
without knowing.
And
I
just,
didn't know
I was so
that.
tired
I
of
was
waiting.
totally unaware, so
I finally went on a lot of power.
that's the part that's like,
I'm good to go. It's like a big 1 inch, like 1/4 inch coil.
your circumstance in life is an easier form.
Make sure you go in the right direction. If you go the wrong direction, if you go up to a toilet, it'll just bust a ton. It's like, oh my gosh, okay, good to know.
Countries around the world.
Power snake, you ever need one? On call.
I feel bad for that guy.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I
But
kind
that's
of think
different
that
than
I know when I'm
going
gonna
and
get
traveling.
it.
and
They
like,
keep sending another
It's
person.
a different guy.
this is my home, this is where I'm paying taxes to, this is where I.
There was a time,
You know,
I mean, I think we've vetted it
In
out.
my space, it should
I
give
mean,
me,
the walking on the street.
At a certain point, we have to say, staff,
yeah, for sure.
we ultimately have to rely on staff to say, hey, we don't have to.
I don't know, yeah, we probably need training.
You can tell
I think
it's
if people are offended by the survey, because to me, the survey was like.
All right, you guys ready?
No answer. It was so pointed and obviously obnoxious.
I've never heard of that term before.
Yeah.
Starting
I hadn't either.
What word is that?
Oh, no, we got
That would be awesome.
Well, I have heard of that, and I've always been offended by that, but Nathan explained to me what that meant. It doesn't mean I work with them, but I was treated special and given advantage, but I didn't work for what I was. I mean, someone
I have
else.
a, I have a brother that's,
Didn't get the
his,
same
his,
opportunity because of that.
degree is in fisheries, in water quality. And he works for an environmental company down in Mississippi. And they do water quality issues. I mean, that's his job.
And then,
So I called him and I said, tell me about Jacob. What's the deal?
Yeah.
You know, they're a worldwide
I
company.
didn't,
He said they're bleeding like you wouldn't believe. He said they're
there
bleeding money,
was
it's
an
unbelievable.
individual who
He
was,
said they're canceling
This summer.
contracts all over the
we had a
country
homeless guy that was.
because of COVID. They, you know, a lot of the projects that they had in process got canceled by cities.
He was
And,
young kid.
and he said they're, I wouldn't be doubting at all if they're trying to raise your fees.
Yeah, well, he did.
Can tell that's not, so I came in.
All right, we're going to go ahead and call the meeting of the Coos Bay Urban Renewal Agency to order. And our first item on the agenda is public comments. Since there is no one in the room besides Dean who doesn't have any comments, I'll assume that we can move on to item number 2, which is the consent calendar.
I'll make a motion to accept the consent calendar.
Do you have a second?
Second?
All right, a motion to approve the consent calendar and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We have no further agenda items for the agency tonight, so we will move to executive session.
The Urban Renewal Agency will now meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 1926602E for the purpose of discussing real property transactions. If the agency intends to come out of executive session to take final action, the presiding officer should announce when the opening session will begin again. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decisions may be made in executive session.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thanks, Melissa.